A question asked courageously, answered honestly, and lived authentically can change your whole life. For me, that question was, how can I use what I have, what I love, and what I know to bless the lives of others? The School for Good Living and this podcast are one answer to that question. Hi, I'm Brian Miller. I know that the world can work for everyone, but that it won't until it works for you. I've created this to help you make the difference you were born to make. It's a series of conversations with thought leaders who are moving humanity forward. And in each episode, I explore their lives and the work they do. I also ask them to break down how they've gotten their books written, published, and read. This podcast is all about exploring the magic and mystery, and sometimes the misery, of the creative process. So if you have a mission, a message, and the motivation to share it, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the School for Good Living. Welcome to part 2 of my talk with my friend and mentor, Marshall Goldsmith. Okay, so that was fun. That was about rapport. Then I want to ask you about this. So with what you do with stakeholder-centered coaching, I love the way that method of coaching, that approach creates what I've come to call a constellation of accountability.
That's right.
Like, I love that. But when people work with a coach one-on-one, as so many do, like a life coach,
right?
How have you found, without that kind of set of accountability partners baked into a 12 or 18-month process, how can coaches or clients successfully create accountability?
Well, it's really, to me, a very different process. I've thought a lot about this, and I don't like to judge what anyone else does to start with, but the traditional coaching mode is quite different than what I do. In traditional coaching, you don't give advice, which is, I guess, okay, but the client doesn't ask for advice. In my coaching, all you do is ask for advice. You get advice from the coach, you get advice from stakeholders, you get advice from all kinds of people, right? You're constantly asking for advice. Well, the idea of a traditional coach is the advice comes from the inside. Now, I've thought a lot about this. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're a life coach, you see, and all you're really trying to do is help the person figure out what they want to do with their life, it makes a lot of sense, because nobody from the outside can actually tell you what you want to do with your life anyway. And that needs to, no one can find happiness for you but you. No one can find meaning for you but you. So I think the more traditional coaching model is really a life coaching model. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not good or bad. It just is. It's different, though. It's very different than what I do. And I'm not a life coach. I do life coaching sometimes, but I don't get paid for that. Yeah. I'm not a life coach. I'm helping successful leaders achieve positive change in their behavior. From a business point of view, life coaching is a terrible business. It is a disaster business. The median income for someone who defines themselves as a life coach is, I think, around $35,000 US a year.
It's a tough way to make a living.
Bag boys make more money.
Yeah.
The only people that want life coaches are typically unemployed. Well, they don't pay a lot. Yeah. And it's nothing wrong with it, though. If you want to do it and it makes you feel good and you're helping others and you don't need the money, do it. Go for it. Nothing wrong with that. You have to know going into it what it is. So there's no money in it.
Well, and what you're saying about this advice, it's interesting to me, and I'm really glad that you brought this up. There's a way in which I don't see it as all that different, because even though in the stakeholder-centered coaching model, yes, you're soliciting a lot of advice, it's ultimately up to you as the client to choose which to accept,
of course,
or reject. So in a way, that internal guidance is
still internal,
still there.
Yeah. No,
that's great. And okay, so I just want to stay with that for a moment, because what you've said, although you answered it, it didn't land with me in a way that might be useful to a client who is engaging. Well, let me shift from that, because I suppose maybe what I'm looking for is what you might call a magic move.
Yeah. Well, to me, here's the key. What I do is coaching people about interpersonal relationships, not just intrapersonal.
Right.
See, the clients I coach, they've already got an idea of who am I and where am I going. That's not my job. My job is, how do you get there? And also, how do you build relationships with those people around you? So if you want to have a better relationship with Mary, to me, the way you end up doing that is not for me to sit in a room with you and ask you questions, and somehow out of the sky, you're going to come up with a solution how to have a better relationship with Mary. If you want to have a better relationship with Mary, talk to Mary.
Pretty straightforward.
Learn from Mary.
Yeah.
right? And let's say you need to be a better listener. Let's say I'm doing your 360 feedback. And feedback indicates you need to be a better listener. Well, that's common advice, right? Now, I can give you good generic advice on how to be a better listener. Fine. I can ask you questions on how you think you might be a better listener. That's fine. The real key, though, is how do those people around you feel? What do they think you need to do? And the specific issues they have might be quite different than my generic advice or your internal thoughts. So that's why in my process, I really say, why don't you focus on everyone around you? Because they're the people you're trying to improve the relationship with, not me.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense, especially where what you talk about advertising, the change that you're making,
Yes.
where I think you say something like, in order to be perceived as having made even a 10% change, one must change 100%.
Well, here's a key point. A couple of points. One, advertising. In my coaching, let me do a quick review of the process. First is you have to agree to get confidential feedback from everyone. By the way, this is not a vote. I never argue with my clients. Everything is either required, which is not a vote. If they don't want to do it, it's okay. I just don't work with them. Or it's optional, which means they do it if they want to. Mm-hmm. So since it's either required or optional, there's nothing to debate about here. So I don't waste my clients' time. By the way, I don't get paid on time. I get paid on results. The cost to my clients hiring me is their time. That's far more valuable than whatever they pay me anyway. The real cost is their time. So here are the rules. First, the requirement. You have to get confidential feedback from everyone around you. Then you and your manager have to agree who are your key stakeholders, or the board does, depends on who I work with. Who are those key stakeholders? You get that confidential feedback. Then you have to pick important areas to improve, and you and the company have to agree they're the right areas. You have to apologize, as you said. You have to come back and say, my name is Jim. I got feedback. Here's what I feel good about. Talk about the positives. Thank people for the positives. Then you say, and here's a couple things I wanted to get better at. You apologize. Made a mistake. Some things I haven't done as well as I could. Please, don't make excuses. Just apologize. Then you say, I can't change the past. Give me ideas for the future. You ask for this feed-forward ideas. You listen. You thank people. You don't promise to do everything. You promise to listen, to think about it, and do what I can, and you follow up. And then every couple of months, you do this follow-up, which is, 2 months ago, I said I wanted to be a better listener. Based on the last 2 months, give me ideas for the next 2, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. And you've seen our research on this. It's called Leadership as a Context Board. I'll send you a copy of it. You can make it available for your listeners, but it always works. It works around the world. We have thousands of people in a database. It's amazingly effective if people do it. Now, back to your comment on changing perception, though. It's much harder to change perception than change behavior. Some people say, do people really change, or are they merely perceived as changing because they do all the follow-up? And the answer is the opposite of what people think. It's easier to change behavior than change perception. One of the best research principles in psychology is called cognitive dissonance theory. We all view people in a manner that's consistent with our previous stereotype. So I have a stereotype of you that says you're a bad listener. I'm going to look for it till I find it. Let me give you a very simple example to talk about perception change versus behavior change. Let's imagine your problem is you make too many destructive comments about other people. I picked that because it seems so simple. That's easy to fix. Quit doing it. Not so simple. Case study A, you get the feedback. You don't talk to me. I'm your stakeholder. You don't talk to me. You don't do any follow-up. You go 7 months and never make one bad destructive comment about anyone. 7 months later, you go, idiots in finance, bean counters, how do we get anything done? I hear you. My reaction is Brian has never changed.
Yeah.
He has never changed. Case study 2, you talk to me. Coworker Marshall, I want to be a great team member, not make bad comments, give me ideas. I don't really believe you're going to change, but at least you talk to me. 2 months later, though, you come back. It's been 2 months. Give me ideas. I say, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. 4 months. Great job. 6 months. Yeah, I didn't think you'd change. You worked hard. Thank you. 7 months. I say, you didn't do that for 7 months. You see, you're right. I'm going to apologize. Situation A, did behavior change? Yes. Did perception change? No. Situation B, did behavior change? Yes. Did perception change? Yes. In leadership, it doesn't matter what we think we said. In leadership, all that matters is what did they hear?
Yeah.
Their perception is their reality. So again, I don't just get paid for behavior change. I get paid for perception change, which is much harder than behavior change.
It's actually pretty profound, I think, and it squares with something another teacher of mine once said about the context. And his statement is, the context is decisive.
Yeah.
And in scenario A, you're not creating a context for the people you work with of you changing.
Right.
And in B, you are. And that's powerful.
Well, and again, if you look at traditional coaching, one of the problems with traditional coaching, there's no measurement, there's no follow-up, there's no feedback. Mm-hmm. How do you know it worked?
Oh, I just feel it. I mean, that's what so many people say, right?
Yeah, well, from a life planning point of view, by the way, that's fine. If your goal is that, nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. On the other hand, if your goal is to help a leader become more effective and change your behavior, not a lot of evidence that it works.
That's right. And it involves much more than the leader. It's
right.
the people the leader leads.
And even if the person did change their behavior, then there's a second question. Did anybody notice?
Right.
Because they may put that person back in that same old box.
Yeah. So in just a moment, I want to transition us to the Enlightening lightning round.
Sure.
But before I do, I want to be sure to ask you about two things.
Okay.
One is about time you spent with Thich Nhat Hanh in Plum Village in France.
Yes.
What it was like, what you learned, that kind of thing. And then the other thing I want to ask you about, one particular experience you had on an airplane. But I'll get to that. If we can talk just for a few minutes about this experience in France.
Well, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk, one of the more famous Buddhist monks. I get to spend a week at Plum Village, France. You're in my home now, so you've seen I've got a beautiful picture of him that I commissioned to have painted. And it was a very inspiring experience. It was very rustic. If you ever go there, by the way, don't be macho. Go for the luxury accommodations, which means you're still sleeping on a concrete thing, but at least you have a roof over your head. So when I say luxury, go for it.
It sounds like the true Buddhist austerities.
Most people are sleeping on the ground. Yeah. So it's very, very rustic. Everybody washes dishes and pitches in and helps out. He's a very humble guy who lives in a little hut. And every day we just get up and talk about life. And one story I always tell is one day we talked about anger. And he said, think to a time in your life when you became angry and lost control of your behavior, and we'll see who was responsible. So I came up with a case study involving my daughter, Kelly. And Kelly I'm very proud of. She has a PhD from Yale. She's a professor at Vanderbilt. When she was 14, it's not so good. So she was the first girl to acquire a large and brightly colored navel ring. And then she had to get a sleazy outfit to highlight the navel ring. And so Daddy comes home and sees this. I start yelling and screaming. And in my monastery with Thich Nhat Hanh, I meditated on it. And he said, now, who was responsible for what happened? And he said, what were you thinking? My first thought was her walking down the street and somebody saying, what a cheap-looking kid. I wonder who her father is. My second thought, even worse, my own friends. I'm amazed Marshall, it's his daughter looked this way. Who was I concerned about here? It's me. Where's the real issue? Her navel ring or my ego? My ego. So I learned a lot from him. I would say my coaching is very much influenced by his philosophy. Feed forward. Mm-hmm. Another thing I've learned from him is, you don't have to do things. Buddha said, only do what I teach if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it's okay. Just don't do it. It's okay. You don't have to judge it or critique it. Well, feed forward is that same concept I learned from him. You ask for idea. You treat it like a gift. You thank people. If you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it anyway. It's okay.
Yeah.
But you don't put people down. You don't argue with people. You don't critique people. You just thank people. And you don't make any false promises. You just say, I'm going to do what I can do. Well, that's such a freeing concept. So I would say a lot of what I do in coaching, I did learn from Thich Nhat Hanh. And what a great guy. Humble, modest guy, great teacher. I love his books. If you read his books, you feel more at peace just reading the book. By the way, my favorite book of his is called Old Path, White Clouds.
Yeah, that's the book. When I asked you a few years ago what you were reading, you told me to read that book.
Have you read it?
And I did.
Did you like it?
I did. I didn't know there was so much history about the Buddha and his life.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize that it's very well documented.
Oh, yeah. And that book, to me, makes you feel at peace just reading the book.
Yeah.
And it's written like children's bedtime story.
Yeah.
Which is about right for me.
It's a long book, too. As I recall, it's like 400 or 500 pages.
It is, but a big type.
Yeah.
And pictures.
It was good. Well, and how long ago was that experience that you went to France?
I don't even know. 15 years ago, maybe.
So long enough to have had a significant influence on your coaching.
Sure.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And then the other thing that I want to ask about here relates to an experience you had on an airplane where when you finally got back on the ground safely, you had a bit more gratitude than I think when you took off.
Yeah. We were flying around on a small plane from LA to Santa Barbara. And very garbled PA system. And there was a stewardess and me. We're the only two people on the plane. So I couldn't make out what the pilot was saying. The stewardess was asleep. So I literally woke the stewardess up. She goes in, what were you saying? He said, the landing gear is not working. So we went down 3 times in a row and it didn't work.
Wow.
Very bad. Then back in the day, we had to circle around till the plane ran out of gas to land, which I guess if the theory is then you're only going to be lightly toasted rather than charbroiled, but you're probably going to die anyway. But we're circling around waiting to run out of gas, which is very distressing. So while we're circling around, you kind of ponder life. And I thought, well, what matters in life? What do I feel good about? What do I regret? And I don't have lots of regrets. I was pretty happy with my life. I thought, well, I've had a good life. You live, you die, you die. I was pretty much at peace. The one thing I wanted to do more of is say thank you to others, and give gratitude and recognition. And I thought, there's so many people that I've not recognized that I should. And I said, if I ever land this plane, I'm going to try to recognize people. So I have to say, since then, you've probably been around me a lot. I work very hard at that.
Yeah.
Saying thank you to a lot of people and trying to give them recognition. And so I work very, very hard at that. And that was something I learned not from a book, but just more of a gut experiential feel. And then years later, flying to Chicago, same thing. Got those yellow, this is a big plane, but they had the yellow emergency equipment. O'Hare Airport completely empty, bad sign. Yellow emergency trucks going right by the plane as we land. Very bad sign, But while I'm circling around, what I think, what I thought? Hey, what the heck?
Wow.
I did feel good about recognizing people. If you die, you die. I felt good about what I'd done. And so I've had that experience a couple of times. And when you're looking at death, it does give you a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, and I think this was in What Got You Here Won't Get You There, that you talk about that. And I think you used the word, that was humorous, a radical fundamentalist when it comes to gratitude, to expressing gratitude. And you talk about when you got down safely and made a list of the top 25 people.
That's right. And try to recognize those 25 people.
So that inspired me, by the way. And I want to say this here. I don't know that'll leave it in the interview when it's edited, but I created one of those for you.
Well, thank you so much.
Because you are undoubtedly one of the top 25 people who've helped me have a great life.
Well, thank you so much. It means a lot to me.
Well, thank you.
It means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
And as an expression of gratitude, I make a Kiva loan on behalf of each of my guests.
Yes.
And I made a Kiva loan on your behalf to a group of women who are in Rwanda.
Oh, how wonderful.
Of $1,000 to help them buy more beans and maize that they will use to improve the quality of life in their community. So I just wanted to give you that too and leave you with that. So thank you for giving me a reason to make that loan.
And we're here at my home. You've seen the picture in my library. And the picture in my library is when I was in Africa in 1984 and they had the Great Famine Campaign. And the picture is of me kneeling on the ground next to a woman and she's measuring the arms of children. And they only fed people between the ages of 2 and 16. If you're over 16, you're on your own. Under 2, you're going to die anyway. And it shows the woman measuring their arms. If their arms are too little, they're going to die. No food. Arms in the middle, they got food. Arms are too big, they're not hungry enough. I try to look at that picture every day. A little reminder. Be grateful.
So with that, I'm going to transition us to the Enlightening lightning round.
Okay.
If you're okay with that. Okay, so this is a series of 10 questions.
Okay.
My aim is to ask them briefly. You're welcome to answer as long as you like.
Okay.
I might jump in a little here and there, but by and large, I'll stay out of the way.
Okay.
Okay. Question number 1. Please complete the following sentence with something other than a box of chocolates.
Okay.
Life is like a
gift.
Number 2. What is something you are not, which you once were?
Intense.
Number 3. If you were required, and I know this might be a stretch, but if you were required every day for the rest of your life to wear a t-shirt with a slogan on it or a phrase or a saying or a quote or a quip, what would the shirt say?
Life is good.
Could have seen that coming. Number 4. What book, other than one of your own, have you gifted or recommended most often?
Old Path, White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay. Number 5. So obviously being an 11 million miler on United alone.
American.
I'm sorry, on American.
I have only 2 million on United.
Only 2 million. Okay. So on American. So you travel a ton. What's one travel hack meaning something you do or something you take with you when you travel to make your travel less painful or more enjoyable.
Put the blanket over your head and sleep, especially on long flights. The lightweight blanket holds in your body moisture. So what happens is if you don't do that, that dry air goes right to the back of your throat, and you probably get a cold or a sore throat. In my job, very bad, very, very bad. By putting the blanket over your head, it holds in the body moisture. You're much less likely to get a sore throat, number one. Number two, no one speaks to you. I did have one funny experience. I was on one plane, a woman walked by and she goes, "Is he dead?"
Oh, shoot. Okay,
By the way, I'm making a movie now, the Marshall Goldsmith, the documentary, and I talk about that in the movie. It shows me with a blanket over my head.
What else do you find that, like, do you have any specific rituals or any requests when you travel? I know some people say, give me a room away from the elevator, on a certain floor, or there's certain foods or exercise, anything.
I have a gift. I can sleep anywhere. I was brought up between a bar, a gas station, on a highway by a railroad track. I was brought up with constant noise. I can sleep anywhere. I've hitchhiked over 10,000 miles when I was young. I slept on the side of the road. I slept in laundromats. I can sleep any place. I have a funny story. A few months ago, I was working with a client, and they put me up in the Marriott Hotel and apologized. I don't know who they think I am. They said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you can sleep okay in a Marriott Hotel." I said, "Look, I've slept under bridges, in laundromats, on the side of the road. I think a Marriott Hotel is just fine. I can sleep here." So I have a gift. And when you sleep, a lot of it is just discipline, too. You just tell yourself, I'm going to sleep. And sleep is it.
Yeah.
When you travel as much as I do, sleep is the more important variable of all. If you can't sleep, you die.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to sleep. And a lot of sleeping is I put a little thing over my eyes, I close my eyes, and I go to sleep.
Again, it's so simple.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, number 6. What's one thing you've started or stopped doing in order to live or age well?
I stopped being a one-on-one executive coach. I stopped teaching at Dartmouth. I really am selling my home, my big home where we are now. So I'm actually stopping a lot of things. I've stopped acquiring anything. So I'm pretty much on a no new possessions binge toward life. Just focus on, those are things I've stopped.
Okay, thank you. Number 7, what's one thing you wish every American knew?
How lucky we all are. I've been to 102 countries. Unfortunately, most people here have no clue how lucky we are. People here say we have starvation in America. No, we don't. I've seen real starvation. We don't have any of that. If you have real starvation, the garbage can is picked clean. Most Americans have never seen starvation. We've never seen extreme poverty. So we really don't realize how lucky we are and how many blessings that we have. So that's the one thing I'd say.
Yeah. I remember as an Asian studies major, I had a class on Chinese history.
Yes.
And the story, the reports during a great famine of people who died with dirt in their bellies.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking there was some nourishment in that. And it's hard to imagine that here. But okay. Number 8, what's the most important or useful relationship advice you've ever heard and successfully applied? Now, this can be marital advice or just general relationship
That's
advice.
what I use over and over. Ask a question. How can I be a better? How can I be a better leader? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? How can I be a better person? How can I be better? That's a question we don't ask enough.
Yeah.
Not how can you be better?
Yeah.
How can I be better?
Okay. Number 9. So aside from compound interest, what's the most important or useful thing you've ever learned about money, or what's something you're sure to always or never do with money?
The first thing is I think money will buy one thing that's very important, and that's you don't need money. To me, the biggest value of money is it eliminates the need for money, which is not a trivial or meaningless thing. The second thing about money is, again, I don't tell people who they want to be. It's just figure out, what do you need? And could be a lot, could be a little. It's not my place to judge you, but just figure out what's right for me and then do that.
That's exactly the advice about money that my dad gave us growing up.
Yeah.
Figure out what's sufficient for your needs and then what you'll do with the rest.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us through roughly 2/3 of the interview.
Okay.
Coming down the stretch, maybe 3/4, 2/3. So the last part here, I just want to turn to an exploration of two things, the creative process and then marketing and promotion.
Okay, good.
So specifically, I want to start with this question about your working relationship with Mark Ryder.
Okay.
I've had the privilege of talking with Mark for about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And he shared with me how unique and special your relationship as, a writing team is. But will you talk a little bit about how do you work together to create New York Times bestsellers consistently?
Very hard to do. Well, to start with, we met because of the New Yorker magazine. The New Yorker magazine wrote the story of my life, and it was an 8,000-word story, and it was a very interesting existential moment. I mean, this woman followed me around for 2 months, and you have no editorial control, and half of them, they just destroy people. So this was not a no-brainer here, and I thought, Peter Drucker taught me this, who's the customer? I thought, well, maybe the customer is my clients, and I said, no, the customer is my unborn great-grandchildren. And I want this to be about me. So after I die, they can read the story, know me. And if I act like someone else or a phony, it's not me. I'm going to act like me. I told my wife, probably going to lose $150,000 or so here, but I don't care. I'm just going to act like me and see what happens. In hindsight, without meaning to, that was the best thing I could have done. In hindsight, what are the odds I'm going to fool this woman with an IQ of 170 from Harvard who does this for a living? 0. And I tried to fool her or put on some show. She'd see through it in about 5 minutes. So it's a very good strategy. And the story was very positive. Mark Ryder reads the story. He calls me up. He says, well, I've read everything you've written, and none of it was that good. I said, well, no kidding. A woman from the New Yorker magazine can write better than I can. I have a day job. She doesn't. He said, how would you like to write a book? It sounded like that. I said, hey, if you can do it, we'll do it. He's my agent and my co-author. We split all the money 50-50. Everything is split in half. And I talk, he writes. I talk, he writes, edit, talk, write, edit. And then we end up with a book. And we have just a wonderful working relationship. And I'm not ashamed to have a co-writer. I'm happy. He can write better than I can.
Well, and for one thing, there's not a single book, well, this maybe isn't literally true, but books are very collaborative. Even though for many books, there's only one name on the cover, there's still a whole team behind any.
Yeah, and so in his case, we have a great relationship. Funny story, like the book Triggers we did. Mm-hmm. He comes to me and says, I think we should call our next book Triggers. What do you think? I said, that's a stupid idea. He said, how stupid is that? That is so dumb. I can't even believe you came up with it. It's so stupid. That's the dumbest idea I ever heard. He said, well, I just went over to the publisher there, and they offered me a $1.2 million advance for a book called Triggers. You know what I said? I love that. Let's go with Triggers on that book. He ended up being #1 New York Times bestseller. There you go.
And a great book.
Of all the books I've written, that one is the most positive customer feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, people like that book.
Yeah, I do for sure. So he told me something like what you're saying, you talk, he writes. He told me about sometimes.
He actually does more than that, though. He kind of comes up with ideas and challenges me and really is a great sounding board beyond just writing. So he's been just a great partner.
Yeah.
And I like him, so we're good friends and get along.
Yeah. It's a bonus. He described something for me where you record your conversations and then he actually transcribes them.
Yes.
And that helps him, again, to hear it maybe more deeply, to start to organize and things like this. And if I understood right, he said that for some of your writing, at least, that you'll actually go maybe to an offsite somewhere and spend a few days at a stretch.
Yeah, we do.
So
he comes here to San Diego sometimes.
Oh. How long does so maybe if you're willing, walk me through what's your process from the time you have an idea, like that you settle on Triggers or any other concept, and then how does that book become a publication?
Well, step one is he and I just talk. And for whatever reason, I don't have any problem coming up with ideas. I mean, I think I come up with ideas for 10 books, anytime, because I'm always coming up with ideas and thinking about things. And, well, I come up with an idea, we run them by him, he says, well, that's a good idea, maybe not a book. And then we'll talk and then finally get something that sounds vaguely like a book. And then we'll start working on a proposal. So I said, okay, well, how is anybody going to buy this? Who would buy it? Why would they buy it? Then we work on putting a proposal together. He writes the proposal. He sells the book to the publishers. And then after that, now we have an agreement and an advance, which is very unusual. $1 million advance today is just not done. So I've gotten 550, 650, 1 million, 1.2 million for my books. So it's a lot of advance. And, a story, if they give you $10,000 and the book fails, it's your problem. They give you $1 million and the book fails, it's their problem. They take it a little more seriously when they give you a lot of money. And you've got more money to advance, to put into promoting the book. So he's great at that. So he's very good. He knows what publishers want and what they're interested in, what people may want. So then we talk and just go over and over with questions, dialogue. And then, as I said, he records everything. He gets it transcribed. Then we go over it kind of again and again. And we spend days. And eventually we end up with a book. And, we argue every now and again. So he'll want to do something I won't want to do, whatever. But we always end up with good outcomes. And, and we've just got a great business and friendship relationship. But I mean, our book Triggers, for example, last year, I don't know, our royalties were, I think, almost $200,000 last year. It was 11 years after the book came out.
Wow.
So we're still getting checks 11 years later. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. So we have, number one, a great working relationship, but two, a great business relationship. We both made a ton of money and helped each other.
Yeah, that's great. And it seems to me like you share a love of sports. I don't know if that's more him.
That's more than him.
Yeah.
He talks about golf.
Yeah.
I don't play golf at all.
Yeah.
People sometimes ask me questions about golf because of the book.
Yeah.
Somebody wanted me a keynote speaker at some golf thing. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible golfer. So the golf stories are all him.
What about the baseball? Is that him too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's great. I mean, of course, in business, there's no shortage of war or sports metaphors.
Yeah, that's right.
But it makes sense because they can illuminate, a point
He's
so
great.
well.
He's great.
That's awesome. And it does come through so strongly as one
Well,
voice.
he's got one golf story he tells. And again, when we write our stories, we don't use the name of most of the time, we don't use the name of the real people, which I learned from him is a great vehicle. That way, you don't have to worry about it, number one, embarrassing people, but number two, you can kind of do a conglomerate of people in a story. So there's one story, it's about him, is he's playing golf. I ask him what's his goal in life. He wants to get his handicap down from a 15 to a 13. I said, look, number one, you're 50-something years old. What percent of all 50-year-old people become better athletes? Almost none. Number two, why do you even care? Why don't you just go out and have fun? And he thought, that's pretty deep. Why do I care? I get my handicap down from an 18 to a 16. I'm a 51-year-old man. No one cares.
He's not going to make the PGA.
I'm not going to make the PGA. Who am I impressing here, right? Yeah. And so why don't I just go out and have fun? So he thought that was very good advice. Just have fun.
And my guess is that if he really followed that advice, he probably would lower his handicap.
And who cares if he does or doesn't?
Yeah, totally.
Nexus IT helps companies of all sizes manage their information technology with hyper-responsive, white-glove IT support and services to handle the most basic tasks, like monitoring and maintenance, to the more complex projects like digital transformation. Visit their website at nexusitc.net.
Okay, so on writing.
So anyway, we have a great relationship, and I would highly recommend many people get a co-writer because writing is a different talent. I'm a good writer, by the way. It's not like I'm a bad writer. I've written hundreds of articles and blogs and things like that that are actually professionally good. I'm a professional quality writer. I'm not a literary quality writer. There's two different skills.
It's an interesting distinction.
Yeah, professional quality is here's a how-to book. Here's the 7 ways you do this and that, like Feed Forward. You read all my articles, like I wrote those. Feed Forward, here's how you do it, or coaching, here's how you do it. Those are very good how-to kind of things. And you're not going to write a New York Times bestseller that sounds like that, though. You got to have stories, you got to have interest, you got to have more drama. And that's a different writing style. And by the way, another book I just wrote recently is called How Women Rise with Sally Helgeson. I was a #2 author on that one. She wrote that book too. She's a great writer. Same thing, though. We dialogue, talk, she writes, dialogue, talk, she writes, I edit. And, again, same thing. That book was a little different, though, because it's probably about 75% of the content came from her, and maybe 25% came from me.
When you're writing or going back and forth with Mark on ideas, how aware are you in those moments of your audience, of your reader?
Not too much.
So when you write, who are you primarily writing for? Or how do you think of that?
I'm just thinking about life.
Yeah.
And so like right now, McKenna is here, who you met her, and she's 21. And she works with me, and I'm asking her questions about life. because I want to get a 21-year-old perspective. I'm not 21. And she talked about her and her friends and their experiences. So I like to talk to people. I mean, if you have some time today, I'd love to talk to you just about the people you're around, people your age, the dramas they have in their lives, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I, in that sense, I do try to think of my readers because they are a wide range of ages. They are typically managers, professionals, entrepreneurs, people that buy business books, typically educated. And again, that's not by choice. It is. Mm-hmm. And so that is pretty much who my audience is. And, my goal is just to help people have a better life. As I've grown older, my level of aspiration has gone down and down and down. My level of impact's gone up and up and up. Why? I quit worrying about what I'm not going to change. So my goal is real simple, like this, making this with you. Maybe one person has a better life because they heard this. Guess what? It's a winner to me. How about you?
That's a beautiful perspective. For me too.
One person sends one email and says, my life's a little better because you did this. It was a good investment.
Yeah. Well, and my life is better. Because,
and my life, yeah. Everybody went in here.
Yeah.
I think we get lost in the search for perfection.
I know I do.
And everything has to be perfect, and you have to be ashamed if it's not perfect. And somebody didn't like detail 54. I've got research from thousands of people. All the stuff I teach, it works if you do it. It's very hard to do it. And by the way, one thing we didn't talk about that is my friend Alan Mulally and I are writing a new book together too called Stakeholder-Centered Leadership. And you've heard him speak. His leadership process is unbelievable. He's probably the best leader of this century. Most people can't do it. They can't do it. Why? It just takes incredible courage. It takes discipline. It takes humility. His process of leadership it's just like my coaching process, the same principles. You have an accountability group. You get feedback. You have ongoing weekly dialogue. You check every day, and then you add it up and report it at the end of the week. It's exactly the same stuff I teach. That's why we get along so well. Most people that try my daily question process quit within 2 weeks. It's hard. Did you ever try it?
I do it.
You do it. It's not easy, though.
I do it, and I was reminded as I was preparing for this interview that even you talk about the difference between keeping a diary, recording on your own, and answering the questions to someone else at the end of the night.
Yeah.
But I do it in an Excel spreadsheet, and I don't hit every night.
Yeah.
But most nights, maybe 80%.
Oh, that's good.
And in fact, let's talk about that for just a moment, because I think this is something that if people are willing to look in the mirror, to be honest about what are these areas of their life that could make a difference for them. And then many of them are binary.
Yeah.
Either you did or you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Will you talk about what is the daily question process and why might someone want to do it?
Okay, first, the daily question process, what do you think? 3 to 5 minutes a day?
If that.
If that.
Yeah.
It takes 3 to 5 minutes a day, if that. It costs nothing. Help you get better at almost anything. Now, some people are skeptical. 3 to 5 minutes a day costs nothing, help you get better at almost anything. It sounds too good to be true. As you know, about half the people quit in 2 weeks. You do this every day, you learn life's real easy to talk and hard to live. How does it work? Get out a spreadsheet. On one column, write down a series of questions that represent what's most important in your life, friends, family, coworkers, etc. Every question has to be answered with a yes or no or a number. Yes is recorded as a 1, no is a 0, or a number, such as how many push-ups or how much do you weigh. 7 boxes across, 1 for every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Fill it out every day, and at the end of the week, the spreadsheet gives you a report card. And again, I'm going to warn you in advance, that picture at the end of the week is not as pretty as that corporate values plaque you see stuck up on a wall. I mean, I've been doing this for years. It's very humbling to do this. It's very humbling for me. I'll speak for myself, a very humbling experience. And I have a person call me every day, Jasmine. She calls me every day, and every day we go through this, and every day she talks about my questions, and, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And again, I'm too cowardly and undisciplined to do this by myself. I wrote the book. That doesn't mean it's easy for me to do.
Yeah, and you wrote the questions.
I wrote the questions.
Yeah.
I write my own questions. It's like one of my questions every day is how many times you try to prove you're right when it wasn't worth it. I'm not seeing too many zeros on that scorecard. Kind of hard for that old professor not to be right all the time. How about you, that young coach? You ever try to be right a little too much?
I've been known to do that on occasion. Yeah.
How many angry or destructive comments did you make about people yesterday? Yeah, I don't see enough zeros on that scorecard either. I don't always do so good on that. And, just say or do something nice for your wife, your son, just questions about life. Again, I'll give you an article about it. You can send to everyone. If you want all my questions, you can have all mine. But the key is you write your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Key is not my questions. The key is your questions. Write your own questions. This is designed to help you get better at what you want. If you want to get better, how to measure it.
Yeah.
Now, back to the extreme example of this, my friend Alan, his process that he implemented at Ford, stock was at $1, it went to $18.40.
That's amazing. I think they were on track to lose $17 billion.
They were losing $17 billion when he started.
He started.
Amazing turnaround.
It's incredible.
On the other hand, I hate to say it, when he left Ford, people quit doing it. It's hard.
Yeah.
Every week in Alan's coaching process, you have to say, my name is, my priorities are, red, yellow, green. Here's my plans for today. Here's my plans for 5 years for today. It's like a public performance appraisal every week in front of not only your 16 peers, but 32 observers.
Yeah, that transparency, well, as you mentioned, the courage, the transparency, the accountability.
Humility.
The humility. There's so much in that. And
it works.
Yeah.
It'll work.
I've experienced that because I've done it consistently since I learned it from you 3 years ago. And as I said, I'm not 100%, but in answering the questions, I'm probably high 90s.
That's good.
And I've seen, I think this is to be expected for anyone that does it over a period. The questions change.
Yeah,
I change the questions.
Yes.
For me, one of them is how many minutes did I read?
Yeah.
Did I show my wife love in a way she likes to receive love? Is one. Did I tell my kids I love them?
Yeah.
That was one. But one thing I thought was interesting in a discussion, I don't remember if it was in the stakeholder-centered coaching training or in the book, but I think you wrote the questions, did I do my best to?
I do. And my first 6 questions I want to share with everyone. I highly recommend these 6. Number 1, did I do my best to set clear goals? Number 2, did I do my best to make progress toward achieving my goals? Number 3, did I do my best to find meaning? Number 4, did I do my best to be happy? Number 5, did I do my best to build positive relationships? And number 6, did I do my best to be fully engaged? Now, our research on this is amazing. Why does that work? Well, the typical employee engagement question is, do you have clear goals? Do you have a friend? Well, if you ask, my daughter Kelly taught me this, you ask a person a question that's called a passive question. If they have a negative answer, they blame the environment. Do you have clear goals? No, they're confused. Do you have a friend at work? No, they're jerks. On the other hand, if you ask, did I do my best? There's no excuse. You have to take responsibility. And doesn't even say you succeeded. Did you even try?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because the hardest question you could possibly ask yourself every day has 4 qualities. Number 1, you write the question. Well, you can't blame the idiot that wrote the question. You wrote it. Number 2, you know the answer. You know how to do it. You can't use the excuse you don't know how. Number 3, you know it's important. And number 4, did you try? Did you do your best? Now, why is that question hard? Nobody to blame. It's so much more fun blaming everybody else for our problems, and let's talk about them and what they need to do wrong. I don't know about you, but I've been doing this now for 25 years. I've learned one thing. I've learned that about 99% of the time, I don't have to look real far to find the source of almost all of my problems. All I have to do is look in a mirror. Did you ever have that same feeling?
I can say I have.
Yeah, where that problem's coming from. It's not out there. No. Where are my problems coming from? They're coming from that guy in the mirror out there. The big source of my problems is not them, it's me.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of massive learnings that you've had in the last few years, another one that I remember hearing you say something about was about this idea that we could all use help.
We all need help.
Will you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, to start with, there was no field of coaching. One thing I'm very proud of in my book, Triggers, 27 major CEOs endorsed that book. Now, why am I so proud? 30 years ago, no CEO would admit to having a coach. They would have been ashamed or embarrassed to have a coach. Well, today it's okay. And we all need help. I need help. That's why I have someone call me on the phone every day. I need help. My name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'm too cowardly and undisciplined to do these things by myself. I need help, and it's okay. Once we get over that silly macho, I can do everything on my own nonsense and realize, hey, we all need help, and it's okay. How many of the top 10 tennis players have a coach? 10?
Yeah,
They usually have
probably multiple.
Multiple coaches. Yeah. Why? They're smart enough to know they need help.
Yeah.
Well, Twyla Tharp, the world's greatest choreographer, one of the best dancers in history, same personal trainer for 27 years. Personal trainer's not teaching her something new after 27 years, just making sure she does this stuff. Mm-hmm. See, what we do is, again, we think, I understand it, I'm going to do it, and we're ashamed. The book, The Checklist Manifesto, doctor goes in for surgery. The nurse asks the doctor a series of questions from a checklist before the surgery. The odds on unneeded infection plummet, the death rate's cut by 2/3. It's just like the daily question process. It works.
Yeah.
The huge majority of hospitals don't allow the nurse to ask the doctor the question why the doctor's ego is too big. They're ashamed to admit they need help. According to Dr. Gwandi, more people have died because of the egos of surgeons than died in the Vietnam War, the Afghan War, and the Iraqi War put together.
Wow.
Why? Ego. They're ashamed to admit they need structure, and they're ashamed to admit they need help. We all need structure, and we all need help. Back to my new book, The Earned Life, I'm going to talk about choice. One of the problems with choice is you don't have structure. Well, if nobody on the outside's giving you structure, you got to get it from someplace. If you think that you have enough willpower to do everything on your own, by yourself, you are very highly probably delusional. I don't have that kind of willpower, nor do I know too many people that do. We all need help.
Yeah.
And once we admit that, it's so much better.
Yeah. That was powerful when I heard you share that. And obviously that's something that's not just a concept for you, but both receiving help, asking for it, receiving it, but also giving it to others.
Yeah.
It's really something I admire. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And if my clients didn't need help, they wouldn't hire me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing is, any of my clients that would say, I'm not going to tell anyone I have a coach, I would not work with. Now, if you're ashamed to have a coach, I'm not going to work with you. That's a terrible message.
Yeah.
The opposite is a much better message. Hey, I get feedback from everyone. I have a coach. I'm trying to improve. One of the great leaders you met is Hubert Joly, who did this spectacular job of turning around Best Buy, was ranked number 2 CEO in the United States last year. And, Hubert has got everyone at Best Buy trained to do this. You can go to any employee and say, what do you want to improve? My name is Jim. I want to be better at. Please give me ideas. Everyone is trained to do that.
That's awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So with our last few minutes, I just want to ask a few questions.
Sure.
About marketing and promotions.
Good. I like that.
Yeah. So in a session where we were together, the notes I took at least had you saying, if I were to give you, and I realize this is coming without context for the listener, but if I were to give you only 3 words, they would be build your brand.
Exactly.
Will you talk more about that? Why is that important?
Well, all right, let's talk about you.
Okay.
And we'll talk about our 100 Coaches Project. My mission in that project is to give things to people who can give things to others. The best thing you can do to help me achieve my goal is to build your brand.
That
Why?
makes sense.
Other people will listen to you.
Yeah.
If you don't have a brand, no one's going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Well, the best way I can leverage my help for you is for you to use that help to help others. And the best way you can do that is to build a great brand. I mean, I have a lot of negatives and a lot of flaws, but building a brand is not one of my problems. I'm very good at that. I mean, do a survey. Who's the number 1 executive coach in the world for years? Me. Who was second? Well, it's a little, not a clear second there, but it's clear who was first, right?
Yeah.
I won. Well, I've got a very good brand. I mean, I'll give you an example. Global Gurus. They did this ranking of coaches. I call them up. I tell them, take my name off the list. I'm no longer want to be ranked. I'm not doing one-on-one coaching. They take my name off. Fine. A week, I see my name is gone. The next week, they have a new category called Guru of Gurus category. They got me up in a special cloud somewhere. Well, you know why? I'm sure they got emails saying, this is a ridiculous list. Why in this case not even on the list? What a stupid list. They had to fix it.
That's funny.
Yeah, now they have me in the special above guru category.
Yeah.
Well, that's building a brand.
Yeah.
All right. Why are you interviewing me? Because I have a brand. Why do my clients talk to me? Because I have a brand. I mean, I'm a good guy and I work hard. I've got a lot of positive qualities, internal and external validation. Internal validation is I want to do a good job because it makes me feel like a good person and I'm proud of myself. I want to do a good job because of that. I want to build a brand because it's external validation helps me do that. And without a brand, my ability to do that is severely limited. So I always tell people, build a brand. A couple of suggestions on how. Number 1, you need to have an identity. My identity is very simple. My mission is to be the world's authority in helping successful leaders achieve positive long-term change in behavior. Do a Google search. Helping successful leaders, in quotes, the first 500 hits, 450 are me, the entire world is 50. I want my brand, I want. Who's second? Nobody close. I've got 100 to 1 over anybody that's second. Why? I had a clear brand. a clear mission, a clear identity. I say who I am and who I'm not, like the other kind of coaching you mentioned. I don't knock it. It can be great for life planning. I don't do it. I don't do strategy. I don't do getting organized. It's not that they're unimportant. They're critically important. I don't do it. Somebody once asked me a question, and I said, oh, I'm not an expert on a topic. And the person said, well, don't you think it's important? I said, it's critically important. They said, well, why don't you have an expert? I said, because it's really important to be a foot surgeon. But if you come to me with a brain tumor, I don't think I should be giving you advice. Well, you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on the topic you're asking a question about. And it's an important question and a very good question for somebody. I'm not an expert. Stick to what you know. I'm an expert on something. So I have worked incredibly hard to build a brand. Now, building a brand, for all your listeners, is hard. Nobody's going to pat you on the head. Nobody's going to say, wonderful job. You get paid absolutely zero for it. And it's a lot of work and effort. On the other hand, you can't start any younger.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. So like social media, it's very hard to get from 0 to 1,000 followers. Very hard. I have 1,000 new followers every week or two. Well, I've got 1.3 million followers. Inertia, I get 1,000 followers every week or two. Well, I have a brand. Now, you might say, well, easy for you. No, it's not easy for me. I made 300 videos to do that. I did a lot of years of work for no pay, for nobody saying, pat me on the head. But you've got to start sometime. And what most people do is they want to skip ahead from 0 to at the top and take some shortcut. If there is a shortcut, I really can't help tell you what it is because I didn't take it. I seem to have taken the long cut myself. So I'm not sure there is a shortcut. You just have to pay the price. Like this interview, it's you building a brand.
Yeah.
You're not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this.
Right.
We're building a brand.
Yeah. Well, and what you said about in the time, that same session we were together, again, my notes were, there is no short-term payoff for building a brand.
No.
You have to be willing to make the investment.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all long-term investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And for me, for anybody who knows me, this is no surprise. But this part of the conversation can become, for me, very philosophical.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, the more I learn about myself and the more I learn about life, it sounds cliche, but it's true, the more I know I don't know.
Exactly.
Right? And so when I learn about myself, one of the things I've come to believe is anything I could ever use to describe who I am is not who I am.
Right.
Right? Anything. So then at that point, what that creates is both a freedom and a fear in a way of choosing a label, not to be a derogatory term,
right?
But then I'm very aware that it's not true, right? It's in whatever reality is. Yeah. But I'll give you the example.
Give me a different word. I wouldn't say it's not true. I would say it's not complete.
Okay.
It probably is true. It's not complete.
Yes, that's...
See, my identity is I try to help successful people achieve positive long-term change in behavior. That is clearly true.
Right.
That's not entirely who I am.
Sure.
Yet that's my brand. So I'm going to give you some wording to help you.
Yeah, thank you.
It is true. If you say it's not true, you're going to feel bad about doing it.
Yeah, that's so. And this idea that you talk about being the world's expert at fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And I love the question you ask. And at the same time, I'm intimidated by the question, which is, if you're not the world's leading expert on a given topic, why are you speaking? Right? Which is a great question. And for people who are starting out perhaps, or maybe they're in the field of life coaching or very competitive industry,
right,
that I think part of the answer to that question can be, you're speaking to figure out who you are. You're to figure out what's your voice, what's your message, who are you?
Yeah.
Right. And I remember when I remember being in Washington, D.C., and it was for one of the MG 100 events.
Yes.
And I took your advice and I went back to my hotel, and I like to travel with the dry erase marker. Yeah. And I'll sometimes write on the mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I wrote, I am the world's leading expert at blank. And for the 3 days I was there, I didn't fill in the blank because it felt so, in the moment, I felt it would be a lie. It could be aspirationally
just say,
true.
I'm going to be the world's expert at blank then.
Yeah. And it's very, very intimidating, but also very useful. But I don't know, again, that there's a magic wand or a silver bullet for this. But how does one choose? How did you choose?
Well, again, don't feel locked in. So here's the advice I give people. Pick a path. Mm-hmm. Pick a path. You've got all the data today you're going to get today. Pick a path. And you say, this is the path for today I'm going to choose. And you don't have to say, I am the world's expert. Say, I'm going to be the world's expert at. You start going down that path. Now, when you go down that path, maybe you want to make a detour. Okay. Hey, I used to want to be the world's expert at helping large organizations develop customized 360-degree feedback. Well, guess what? I was. Then I thought, well, that's nice, but that field is kind of going nowhere. It's going to be, all automatic, and I prefer something else. Mm-hmm. So I changed my path. Going down a path, though, helps you, because that path helped me with my other path. It led to my other path. To me, go someplace. Don't just drift around. And if you have a path, you learn about achievement on a path. You can change the path, but you're still learning about achievement on a path. So one idea I have is have a path. Pick a path. You don't have to live with it for eternity, but at least you're going someplace. You're not going no place. Number 2 is, and this is something you've been good at, meet parallel experts. Mm-hmm. I'm a parallel expert. I'm not threatening to you. I'm not your enemy. You've met a lot of other people in the 100 coaches. They're not your enemies. Meet people who are traveling down other paths you can learn from. Learn how they're doing their job. Whitney, what's she doing right? Obviously, Sun Yin, these people are doing something right. I was at the Thinkers 50. I saw a lot of them get awards there. So, they're doing a lot right. What can you learn from these people? What can you learn from Alan, from Jim Kim? They're not threatening. You're not their enemy. They're friends. Yeah. So how can you pick people to help you? Then you go down that path and you say, I'm going to meet fellow travelers in life, and they can help me and I can help them. The win-win. And then you just say, just keep going down the path. Going down the path. The only coach I have for you is you worry too much. Quit worrying so much.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
You know me 3 years. You know everything about me.
Yeah, quit worrying so much. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what's left to say. I do want to ask this. I've
always got my final advice. So before we wrap up, I need to do that.
Okay. We'll do that. And we'll also do this question. In your opinion, what are the qualities of a great sentence, and how can we write more of them?
Answer is, not an expert.
Okay. All right.
You practice what I preach. If I could answer that, my name would be Mark Ryder, not Marshall Goldsmith.
Yeah. It's interesting, by the way, that Paul, going back to the earlier part of the conversation, is the one that gave you the $1,000 a day opportunity. But then later, I recall you saying he was the one that gave you advice to do more than running around charging days.
Well, that's what happened. He gave me this advice. I was very successful. Then he said, you're making too much money. And he said, you're not going to be who you could be. You're just running around selling days. You're not building your brand. You're not writing. You're not thinking. You're just selling days. And you're good at it and your clients are happy. That's it. You're never going to be who you could be. And for 10 or 12 years, I really did not listen to him adequately. But finally, I met Francis Hesselbein and other Peter Drucker and other great people, and they really helped me to build my brand and become more. Yet he tried. And sometimes you just don't listen to good advice when you get it, or maybe the wrong period of time. Who knows? But anyway, that was good advice. And the challenge there was comfort. It's hard to change when you're comfortable.
I experienced that because my life is so comfortable.
That's right. Well, and by the way, your listeners, in many ways, the listener that's kind of desperate may be the first one to implement this advice. The listener that's the most comfortable will be saying, well, I don't need to do that. I'm making money. I'm pretty successful. Well, don't think that way. I'm in a group that has been meeting for 25 years. When that group began, from a socioeconomic point of view, I was kind of in the middle. Now I'd be kind of at the top. 6 people went bankrupt from that group. And they were all very distinguished people. They were very good at what they were doing. What happened, though, is they read their own press clippings and they quit trying to reinvent themselves. And the show ran out. Garth Brooks, the marquee misspelled his name and not too many people came. It happens. It happens. And, it's not like this stops. This building your brand. I build my brand that I don't have to do it anymore. It doesn't actually work that way.
Yeah, success is never final.
I mean, Jim Collins is a great guy, great book. Thinkers 50 this year. He was number 41. It goes up and it comes down.
Yeah. Well, I do want to include this as well. If people want to connect with you or they want to learn from you, what would you have them do?
Well, send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. If there's anything you have a question about, whatever, just ask. I can't promise to get back to you immediately. I always get back to people eventually. Go to my website, www.marshallgoldsmith.com. I have, I think, 300 videos online, hundreds of articles. It's all free. Copy, share, download, duplicate, use whatever you want, any way you want. Sometimes, like today, somebody sent me a note from New York. They needed permission. I mean, it says it's all free on the website, but anyway, I'll write. If you need permission, I'm happy to send you a note so you have my permission to do this stuff. Sometimes people do for whatever, it's fine, for whatever reason. So feel free to use my stuff in any way. YouTube, I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. And then if you're interested in 100 coaches, again, you have to realize your odds are not great, but if you're interested, give it a shot. Send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. You say, here's my name, here's my biography. Here's why I'd like to be in this organization. Here's how I'm going to help others. You never know. No downside.
Yeah. And also people can visit mg100.org to learn more.
Yeah. And also talk to this guy over here. Talk to Brian, because he's the one who needs to be adopting people anyway. So talk to him and make the pitch to him.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Marshall, we've covered everything and more that I had hoped to.
Except my final advice.
That's right. So I want to be sure we get that.
Are we ready? Okay, final advice, the best coaching advice you're ever going to get. Take a deep breath. Imagine you're 95 years old and you're just getting ready to die. You're on the deathbed. Right before you take the last breath, you're given a beautiful gift, the ability to go back in time and talk to the person that's listening to me today. The ability to help this person be a better leader, better coach, much more important, to have a better life. What advice would the wise 95-year-old you, who knows what really mattered in life and what didn't and what was important and what wasn't, what advice would that wise old person have for the you that's listening to me right now? You don't have to say anything or do anything or write anything. Just answer that question in your mind. Whatever you're thinking now, do that. In terms of performance appraisal, that's the only one that matters. That old person says you did the right thing, you did the right thing. That old person says you made a mistake, you made a mistake. You do not have to impress anyone but that old person. Some friends of mine interviewed old folks who were dying, got to ask this question: what advice would you have? On a personal side, 3 themes. Theme number 1, 3 words: be happy now. As we discussed, not next week, not next month, not next year, that great Western disease. I will be happy when I get the money, status, BMW. Don't get so busy chasing what you do not have that you cannot see what you do have. Common comment from old people: I got so busy chasing what I didn't have, I couldn't see what I did have when I had just about everything. Number 2, friends and family. I'm sure your companies are very nice and important. When you look around the deathbed, none of your coworkers are waving goodbye. Friends and family, the people that matter. Number 3, if you have a dream, go for it, because you don't go for it when you're 25, you probably won't when you're 85. It doesn't have to be a big one. Maybe go to New Zealand or speak Spanish, play a guitar. Old people that try to achieve our dreams are always happier than those that didn't. None of us are going to achieve all our dreams. The question is, did you at least try? Business advice isn't much different. Number 1, life is short, have fun. Number 2, do whatever you can do to help people. And number 3, go for it. The world's changing, your industry's changing, do what you think is right. You may not win, at least you tried. Old people, we never regret the risk we take and fail. We always regret the risk we fail to take. And finally, it's my honor to be able to talk to everyone today. I know many of you are in entrepreneurial positions where you're creating organizations. Maybe you're a manager where you're influencing people. Maybe you're a coach. So again, my hope is maybe help you have a little better life, and then even better, maybe you can help someone else have a little better life. So thank you very much for this kind invitation.
Thank you, Marshall. And thank you to everyone who's listening. I'm so glad that you joined us. It's my hope that you take some of what you've learned here and share it with others in ways that you enjoy and that benefit you and that benefit others. So until next time, take care. Despite living in an age where we have more comforts and conveniences than ever before, life isn't working for many people. Whether it's in the developed world, where we're dealing with depression, anxiety, addiction, divorce, jobs we hate, relationships that don't work, or people in the developing world who don't have access to clean water or sanitation or healthcare or education, or who live in conflict zones, there's a lot of people on the planet that life isn't working very well for. If you're one of those people, I invite you to connect with me at goodliving.com. I've created Life's Best Practices Breakthrough Coaching to help you navigate the transitions that we all go through. Whether you've just graduated school, you're going through a divorce, you just got married, you're headed into retirement, you're starting a business, you just lost your job, whatever it is you're facing, I've developed a 36-week course that you go through with me and a community of achievers and seekers who are committed to improving their own lives and the lives of others. So through this online program, you will have the opportunity to go deep into every area of your life, explore life's big questions, create answers for yourself in community, get clarity and accountability. If that's something you're interested to learn about, I invite you to contact me directly at brian@brianmiller.com or by visiting goodliving.com.